North Platte.
All right.
Let's get her started. Good Thursday morning and welcome back to Commentators Corner, episode number 6 here as we close out the month of September and get ready to turn things over into October. Tyler Reedy and Brendan Preisman with you once again. And Brendan, how's it going this morning?
Well, it's going pretty well. A little tired today because it's near the end of the week. But, hey, it's Spirit Week, and you know what that means. We got the homecoming game coming up against North Platte on Friday, and then something that you're probably not going to next Saturday, the actual homecoming dance. You haven't showed any interest yet.
As far as I know, you're in the same position.
No, I'm going.
Okay.
I don't have a date, but I'm going.
All right.
I'll be there one way or the other.
I may be in the same boat, but anyway, speaking of homecoming, as you said, we've got the homecoming game. Prep and North Platte playing football on Friday night at Berg Stadium. That game will be on Creighton Prep TV, so you can watch it right here. Prep still ranked 4th after winning 28-21 on the road at number 8 Millard West last week in one of the best prep games I've seen in my time here. Maybe second only to the Millard West game last year. Junior Jays down 14-0 at one point. Offense looked rough early. Didn't look like they'd be able to run the ball, but then all of a sudden, Shamar Brown just out of nowhere goes for 250 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Also a 37-yard game-winning receiving touchdown. What a night.
The crazy thing about that is they needed every last one of those yards. Here's some other important stats from that game. You mentioned the 250, 3 total touchdowns, all of that. Millard West won the turnover battle 3-0. Jack Stessman and George Egan had 25 yards combined. Nathan Peterson, one of the Millard West running backs, had 5.4 yards a carry, over 120 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. And Millard West had 20 less penalty yards. So basically the only reason that Creighton Prep won that game is because of Marty Brown. And, we were on the sidelines watching that game. This was crazy to us as it was happening. I remember saying stuff like, he's got to go down at some point, right?
Yeah.
He's taken so many hits. I said that in the third quarter, and he kept going, and he kept going. And then the one time it did seem like he finally started to act human when he suffered some cramps with about a minute 30 to go in the fourth quarter, he came right back and caught a touchdown on a beautifully designed wheel route to seal the win.
Yeah, great game. Great close, as you said, with Shamar Brown going down for a moment, then a few plays later coming back and making the game-winning play. So now we look at North Platte, and I tell you what, just doing the research, looking into the Bulldogs, this game feels a lot like what the Lincoln Southeast game felt like a couple weeks ago. You got a team in North Platte that is run the ball. They've got really a running back by committee going on. Brock Robley is their running back 1. He's got 433 yards, 3 touchdowns on the year, but Vince Genatone is also there. He's their most explosive back with 560 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. Leads the team in both of those categories, but North Platte, a passing game is, quite frankly, an endangered species. They've only thrown the ball 8 times this year.
22.
Oh, yeah, they've completed 8 passes, thrown 22 times. Thank you. 8 for 22, North Platte passing. So Prep, if they can do what they did to Lincoln Southeast, which is shut down the run game, this could easily be another blowout because North Platte has not proven to be effective playing from behind or passing the ball. The one tough team they've played this year, Kearney, which is a borderline top 10 team, blew them out by 28.
Yeah, Prep's definitely got their work cut out for them. You mentioned the passing game is an endangered species, and a lot of their games has been basically non-existent. Here's their first 3 games. They beat Aurora 42-14, Fremont 34-0, and lost to Kearney 42-14. Against Aurora, they were 2 of 4 passing. Against Fremont, 0 of 1. Against Kearney, 2 of 7. That is 3 games in which they threw 12 passes, and they've only thrown 10 in their last 2. So this is a team that really doesn't pass the ball, as I'm going to write in the precap in a bit. They don't really throw the ball unless a brick wall drops onto the field. And their running game, as you mentioned, it's explosive. Over 300 yards in each win, and it's over 300 yards by a lot in all of those, including 6 rushing touchdowns against North Star a couple of weeks ago. So this is a team that can definitely run the ball. Kearney gave the blueprint. Against them, North Platte had 48 carries for 210 yards and just 2 touchdowns. So if you can stop their backs, especially in the red zone, you should have a good chance at beating them. And Prep, as we've seen, has been very good at stopping running backs and getting red zone stops.
Yeah, remember, Jack Stessman ran for 247 against these guys last year, so that Prep run game could feast once again. But I think the only thing you got to be careful of if you're the Junior Jays, don't have a letdown. You've had a couple really big wins consecutively. Now the schedule seemingly starts to ease up just a little bit, but you can't let that get into your head too much and play down to your competition. You got to keep rolling, keep playing at that high level, that high intensity, and Junior Jays could really rack up some momentum down the stretch here.
Yeah, they definitely could, and it's going to start here. The defense helped carry that. The defense and the run game helped carry the team to that win last week over Millard West, and they're probably going to do it again. This one, as you said, a slightly tougher test, but that doesn't mean Prep can just afford to look past them. This is still going to be a good football game, at least for a while. The goal for Prep is to make sure it's not a good football game for too long by shutting down the run.
So the football game, Friday at 7 o'clock. The cross-country team also runs at the Millard West Invite before that, Friday afternoon. And then the tennis team is coming off a strong performance in the West Side Invite earlier this week. Zach Kuo improved to 26-0 on the season as he won the singles in that West Side Invite. So tennis, cross-country, football, all going strong at the moment as we turn things over into October, and we'll turn things over to college football now as we're 5-6 weeks in, and last week really turned out to be a very exciting week of football. It started with Notre Dame and Wisconsin playing in a top 20 matchup at Soldier Field. Irish outscored the Badgers 31-3 in the fourth quarter to win that one 41-13. They move into the top 10 ahead of a big matchup, which we'll get to in a moment. Clemson was upset by North Carolina State 27-21 in overtime. Texas A&M lost to Arkansas. Arkansas moves into the top 10 as their run game was excellent yet again, and passing game had a big play element to it as well. Iowa State was defeated by Baylor. There's another upset. ISU just can't get out of their own way in September, it seems like. They always have a loss or two early in the season that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then North Carolina got blown out 45-22 by Georgia Tech. ACC not having a great week again. You really can't decide who the best team in that conference is at the moment.
Wake Forest, baby.
Wake Forest, I guess so. And then Oklahoma only beat West Virginia 16-13. They needed a last-second field goal to do it. Spencer Rattler and the Sooners, definitely not what we expected them to be.
I mean, I've said this for a while now, at least in my opinion. Oklahoma is not as good as people think they are. They're not as good as they were back in the days of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, where it's like, oh, this team is going to have a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, and they're going to win 11, 12 games and make the playoff, where they're going to get curb stomped by an SEC team. They're not even that good this year, really. I don't see what people see in Spencer Rattler. I don't think he's as good a quarterback as a lot of people say he is. I remember people saying all last summer, oh, once he gets into his sophomore season, he's going to be great. He's going to be like the number one pick in the NFL draft. I haven't seen that from him. I haven't seen anything from him that shows me that he can win a game in the NFL, or even win a lot of games that he needs to at the college level. And seeing him put up 16 points on West Virginia and almost losing, sure, props to him for leading a game-winning drive, but you shouldn't be in that situation against West Virginia. That's part of the killer instinct that great quarterbacks need to have, and I don't think he has it.
Yeah, and that Oklahoma run game was also held to 47 yards, so just a poor offensive performance as a whole. So you look ahead to this week, and I tell you what, college football I feel like is in a really great place this year because, yes, you have Bama and Georgia 1 and 2 solidified at the top. I don't think they're going to be moved for quite a while, if at all, this season, but those 3 and 4 spots in the playoff are really anybody's game. You've got several teams with big games this week trying to jockey for a position. One of them is Iowa, the 5th-ranked team in the country, on the road at Maryland tomorrow night. Iowa's only a 5-point favorite, so keep an upset watch on that one. Maryland is 4-0, and they have beaten West Virginia, a team that has played very well against some of the better teams in the ACC, Big 12.
And upset Virginia Tech,
too.
Talking
about Virginia Tech, Oklahoma, And then the big one of the week, or at least one of the two big ones, Cincinnati and Notre Dame. That's a 7 versus 9 matchup. Cincinnati 7, Notre Dame is 9. That one is in South Bend, and the question is, can Cincinnati get that win to prove that they can be a playoff team But Notre Dame, the evil empire of Notre Dame, can they?
They're not an evil empire. They're not an empire.
That's what most people would say about them. I mean,
no one would say that about
know.
them. They haven't
Maybe.
been nationally relevant consonsistently since like the 80s.
Yes,
dude.
they have.
No,
They've made the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. But anyway.
And what's happened in those playoff games? You want to talk about that?
Anyway, can Notre Dame be the bad guy and take out Cincinnati's playoff hopes? They've got a home winning streak going back to September of 2017.
Good for them. This is also by far the best team they've played this year. And Desmond Ridder, I don't know if you know this, Tyler, but he's a better quarterback than Graham Mertz.
Oh, yeah, I know
He
that.
doesn't throw to the other team 4 times in the fourth quarter. So I think Cincinnati's going to take this one. I do think it's going to be close because Notre Dame is still a talented team for all I've been ragging on them this year. They are still by no means a bad team, but they are a team whose record is a lot better than they actually are, considering the quality of opponents that they've played. And I think that Cincinnati takes this one, I'm going to go about 35-31, and I think that this could be a potential earthquake moment, not just for the Cincinnati program, which is probably going to join the Big 12 in a couple of years once the realignment starts happening, but also for college football as a whole. I think if Cincinnati wins this, the powers that be in college football are really going to start looking at like, well, maybe we should do a 12-team playoff because clearly these teams from the group of 5, these third-place teams in whatever Power 5 conference, they can hang with the best of the best. We just need to give them a chance to do so. But I don't think that happens unless Cincinnati wins.
Another top 10 matchup down in the SEC at number 8 Arkansas. They've already got a couple really strong wins on the season, and
including one against Texas.
Yep, Texas and Texas A&M. But now they go into Athens to take on second-ranked Georgia. UGA is an 18.5-point favorite in a top 10 matchup. That just tells you how good Georgia's been this year. But we'll see how close Arkansas can keep it. And I think this game's really going to confirm just how wide the gap is between Bama and Georgia and the rest of the field, because Bama and Florida played close, but we don't know, was that game a fluke? Did Bama just have a bad outing? I think this game will really tell.
Better?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key for Arkansas is going to be their defense, because we know that Georgia's defense is going to come up and show out, but Arkansas was able to beat Texas A&M despite scoring just 20 offensive points, and the reason they were able to do that is because their defense shut down a fairly poor A&M offense as well. So I think if they can keep this game within, let's say the 17-14 range, I think they've got a real chance to pull an upset and prove that they're a legitimate playoff contender. If they can't do that and they let Georgia's offense get going, then I think they're going to be in trouble. I personally think that there's a couple of games actually to keep your eye on over the rest of the week too. Both of them ranked versus ranked. First one, Ole Miss, Alabama. Bama's favored according to ESPN by 14.5 points. That's on CBS at 2:30. But Ole Miss has seemed to have Alabama's number a couple of these years. You remember the Chad Kelly days when they would get that one crazy play where they'd snap the ball over his head and he'd somehow throw a touchdown. The interception in the back of the end zone another year.
Yep.
If there's an SEC team that can upset Alabama early in the year, it's Ole Miss almost every time. Issue is, of course, Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's an ex-Saban assistant, and we've seen what Nick Saban can do when he's coaching against his ex-assistants. So I think Bama gets that one, but I think it's a close, chaotic game, and I'm looking forward to it.
The over-under 79 for that
79.
one. That's a ridiculous number. So, anything can happen there in Tuscaloosa.
And speaking of high over-unders, Baylor, Oklahoma State is on ESPN2. Both teams ranked right outside the top 20. Oklahoma State 19, Baylor 21. Both teams 4-0. Baylor coming off that upset of Iowa State that you mentioned. And both of them pretty high-flying offensively. Obviously for Oklahoma State, you've got Spencer Sanders. He's thrown for almost 600 yards this year, but that's nothing compared to what Baylor's done through the air. I mean, their quarterback, Jerry Bohannon, has already thrown for over 800 yards on the year and 7 touchdowns. So the over-under for this one somehow is only 47.5. But both teams, and that's because both teams actually have pretty good defenses, at least right now for the Big 12. Baylor's only allowing 16 points a game. Oklahoma State's only allowing 20. So that should be an interesting game that could come down to the turnover battle. And a little closer to home for college football, Nebraska fans are very, very, very sad. They were dominating Michigan State for the longest time, up 20-13 in the second half, having not allowed a first down, when a shanked punt and a beautifully disguised return call by Michigan State tied the game and sent it into overtime. Michigan State was able to win on a field goal, and Nebraska fans found another way to have their hearts break. Like, at some point with this program, you have to ask, is Scott Frost the guy? Because he just doesn't appear to have the close game killer instinct that he did at UCF, where you knew going into the fourth quarter, as long as we don't mess this up, we're going to win. But with Nebraska, it's turned into, at this point, like, not are we going to mess this up, but how are we going to mess this up? They're 5-15 in one-score games since he arrived at the school. That is absolutely atrocious. And at some point, the school administration does have to start looking, is this coach the right coach for us?
Yeah, that's a great stat, that one possession stat.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in Texas, they have returned to being good offensively, folks. They haven't fully returned yet. I will say that 3-word phrase that has cursed my waking and sleeping nights for years. I'm not going to say it. You can say it if you want.
No.
But put up 70 on Texas Tech. Bijan Robinson looks like a legitimate Heisman contender. Casey Thompson is a very good quarterback. They've got TCU this week. They have been very, 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 very bad against TCU since they've joined the Big 12. But if they can get a win against TCU, they'll move to 2-0 in conference play and set themselves up nicely when the Oklahoma showdown comes up. And I think, as I've mentioned earlier, Spencer Rattler doesn't look that good. Oklahoma appears to me to be a very beatable team. And I think if Texas wins that game, really the sky could be the limit for this team.
Yeah, I do think Texas has an explosive element that Oklahoma has really been missing at several key points this season. And Texas, as you said, is hot. Offense has really turned things around since Arkansas. So, yeah, it's certainly an upset-watched game. All that taking place on Saturday. Let's move to Sunday, and that starts tonight. NFL Week 4, Thursday Night Football. The Jacksonville Jaguars visiting the Cincinnati Bengals. We've got to try and break away with our score predictions. We still have an identical record, but
we're both 67% on the year. Like we're not
not
doing
bad.
badly. So
Yep, but Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Bengals coming off a big win in Pittsburgh, and I know everybody wants to talk about that offense with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, all of them, but defense has been pretty solid for Cincinnati this year. They held Minnesota under 25 points. They held the Bears to a pretty low total, although that doesn't take much. And then Pittsburgh, just 10 points last week. Cincinnati, I think, takes care of Jacksonville 31-17.
yeah, I think it's 27-13. I think Trevor Lawrence is a very, very good quarterback. But right now, this team is just not built around him the way it needs to be. We saw that with Peyton Manning back in 1998 when he came to the Colts and set a record for interceptions in a year as a rookie. It doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. It just means that he doesn't have enough pieces around him. Right now, Lawrence doesn't. Joe Burrow finally does. He and Jamar Chase have an excellent connection dating back to the LSU days. I think Bengals 27-13.
Chiefs are last in the AFC West after dropping back-to-back games to the Ravens and the Chargers. They go on the road to Philadelphia. Eagles just got stomped by the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. And Chiefs, I think they'll bounce back pretty well, 30-24 over the Eagles.
I don't really think it's that close. I think that the Chiefs, for the first time in a while, really, ever since that Super Bowl against San Francisco, they have something to prove again, which is something that a lot of dynasties struggle with. We occasionally saw that with the Patriots in years like 2007 and 2011, where it's like, we'll just go out there and let business take care of itself. I mean, we're a good enough team that we can do that. The Chiefs have realized that with their defense and line issues, they can't really afford to do that anymore. So I think they come out. I think Mahomes plays like the MVP candidate that he is, and I think it's 42-21.
Washington football team at the Atlanta Falcons. Washington just got blown out by Buffalo last week. Josh Allen had a career day, and the Falcons got the win over the Giants. They're 1-2 now, but Washington, I think that defense, they've been kicked in the mouth so far. I think they've got to emerge at some point, and I think they'll have a pretty solid outing against Atlanta. 23-17 football team.
Yeah, 2014 football team. It is the football team versus the Falcons. It's not a great game, but it's going to be decent if you like defense and Matt Ryan's life being miserable. And I think that with Taylor Heineke still back there under center for the football team, all they have to do is make sure he's not getting shellacked on every play. And the Falcons, I don't think, have enough of a pass rush to really do that. So, yeah, I've got the football team.
This one should be pretty easy. Buffalo hosting the Houston Texans. Bills coming off that big win against Washington. They've got back-to-back blowout wins against Miami and Washington. So seems like they have hit their stride, and I think it'll continue against a reeling Houston team without Tyrod Taylor. Buffalo 34, Texans 14.
I don't know. I like Houston in this game to put up about 10 points and get absolutely blown out of Buffalo. I've got 35-10 Buffalo. I think this might be the year for Josh Allen to win the MVP. I don't think Brady's going to get it, especially after the loss to the Rams. I think right now it's a 2 or 3 horse race between Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, and maybe Justin Herbert, at least right now. And I think Allen's going to continue that against the Texans.
This one could be interesting. Detroit at Chicago. The Justin Fields experience looked rough last week against a very, very tough defense in Cleveland. I think it was 9 sacks the Browns picked up. Myles Garrett
one net passing yard.
Wow.
One.
Yep. Myles Garrett had a monster day with, I think, 4.5 sacks. I think it's going to be an easier game for Justin Fields, but Detroit hasn't been quite as bad as I think we all thought they would be. They played Baltimore very close last week, and I think they're going to go into Chicago and win it 23-20.
I agree. I mean, I don't think that the Lions game would have been as close as it needed to be, and we'll get to what happened when it got close in a bit in this podcast. But that game could have been a blowout if Hollywood Brown could, catch the ball. I was watching that with my family, and he dropped at least 3 sure big plays. But the Lions are decent, and the Bears, I think they're still trying to find their way along. Matt Nagy hasn't really realized that Justin Fields can do things like run and throw the ball deep, and I think he's still running the offense he put in for Andy Dalton, but that's not a Justin Fields-type offense, and I think he's going to regret it. I think the Lions get their first win of the year, 17-14.
Carolina at Dallas. Cowboys looking very impressive after a big win against the Eagles on Monday night. Carolina is off to a solid start as well, 3-0 after beating the Texans on Thursday Night Football, but that Dallas offense, just too good. Carolina is missing Christian McCaffrey for several weeks with a hamstring injury, and I've got Dallas 30-19 in this one.
Yeah, I've got Dallas 27-20. I mean, the Panthers look solid, but they're not a fully legitimate contender yet, especially without McCaffrey. I think Sam Darnold's good, but he's not good enough to go into Dallas and outduel Dak Prescott.
Indianapolis at Miami. Colts are 0-3 to start the season. Miami took the Raiders to overtime last week. Indianapolis, I think they've got to get off the schneid at some point. I think this is the week to do it. I just can't see them starting 0-4, considering how much talent they have on both sides of the ball. They're expected to stay with Tennessee, and they haven't been able to do that so far. But I think they'll beat Miami 26-17 and pick up their first win of the year.
Well, you can't see them going 0-4, but I can.
Ooh.
I've got the Dolphins in this one. I mean, I thought they showed a lot of heart against the Raiders. I thought Jacoby Brissett played really well leading that comeback. Admittedly, it didn't end up in a win, but they played the Raiders about as well as any team has so far this year, and credit to them for that. And the way their offense is designed is similar to the way we've seen a lot of pretty good contenders' offenses designed over the years. No Tua right now, obviously. So the goal is just don't make too many mistakes on offense and make sure the defense can get some stops. And the Colts, they're just so injured right now that I don't think they have enough. I've got the ugliest game of the week. I've got 19-7.
Ooh, okay then. All right. I think this one will be a little bit more high scoring. Cleveland at Minnesota. Vikings got a big win over the Seahawks last week. Cleveland is rolling as well, back-to-back victories over Houston and Chicago. I think the Browns go on the road. They run the ball well. Baker Mayfield has a solid day, and they win at 33-24.
I've got almost the exact same score, 31-23 Browns. And I think you mentioned the offense, but I think it's going to come down to who's got the better defensive player, and that's the Browns and Myles Garrett. I don't think he's going to have 4.5 sacks again, but he's going to affect the game just enough that the Vikings aren't going to be able to pull it off.
Giants at Saints. Before the show, you told me it was the interception game of the week with Danny Dimes and Famous Jameis going head-to-head, but I do think the Saints will get the better of the Giants. New York will drop to 0-4 as the Saints win 24-17.
28-24 New Orleans. My guess is both quarterbacks will have multiple interceptions. But the thing with Jameis Winston is he's got the multiple interceptions, but he's also got the chance that one of his interception-worthy balls will be like a 67-yard touchdown. And I think he's going to have one of those. I think that one of these defenses is going to get pick six. And I feel like it's more likely to be the Saints just because Daniel Jones tends to be a little wilder with the ball than even Jameis sometimes. And I don't think his legs are enough to fill that gap, especially with a fairly solid defense that we've seen from the Saints these past couple of weeks. So, New Orleans 28-24.
Titans at Jets. It's not even November yet, and Derrick Henry is already running wild, and I think it'll continue at MetLife Stadium on Sunday. Tennessee 30, New York 17, as the Jets just look lost right now.
I don't think there's any way they even put up 17. I've got 34-14 Titans. Derrick Henry is very good. I mean, at this point, he'd probably be a better quarterback for the Jets than whoever they could trot out because Zach Wilson also looks lost. The Jets' offense as a whole looks pretty listless. They didn't score against the Broncos last week, and Wilson threw 2 pretty poor interceptions. So, I mean, even saying that they'll put up double-digit points might be a bit of a stretch, but I think the Titans win this one in a blowout too.
Cardinals at Rams. Kyler Murray show looking to continue trying to improve on his MVP campaign. Arizona, a little bit dicey at times last week at Jacksonville. Rams still rolling after beating the defending champs Tampa Bay last week. And I tell you what, Arizona has had issues with the Rams. They have lost 8 straight games to the Rams going back to 2017. I think it will continue. I think the Rams are the best team in football right now, and they win at 28-24.
I don't think it's quite that close. I've got 28-17 Rams. I think that they're continuing to prove that they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I didn't really think they were at the beginning of the year, but they have proved me wrong, and credit to them for that. Matt Stafford looks like the perfect quarterback for that group. And the Cardinals, they were struggling with Jacksonville for some time. Obviously, some of that is a bit circumstantial, of course. The 68-yard field goal attempt that was returned 109 yards for a touchdown that gave Jacksonville a 14-7 halftime lead. But they needed a pick six of Trevor Lawrence to even win by 12 against Jacksonville. So I don't think they can keep it close against the Rams.
Seahawks at 49ers, another big matchup in that NFC West. Seattle had that rough loss. The offense basically shut down in the second half against Minnesota, but I do think Russell Wilson and the gang will bounce back, and Seattle will go on the road to beat San Francisco 27-23.
I disagree.
Oh.
I feel like there's something off in Seattle this year. I think the Vikings loss is a loss that previous iterations of this team would never have had to deal with because they would go into Minnesota and they would take care of business. That didn't happen last week. Whether you want to blame that on Wilson or the defense, whatever. But there is something off in that team. And going to San Francisco, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo plays just well enough with all the weapons he's got around him to win the game. I've got 31-28.
Ravens at Broncos. Ravens will be the subject of our What is Happening segment in just a moment. But Denver, I think there's that NFL team every year that gets off to a really, really good start. Nobody expects it. They take a really strong record into October and maybe even November, and then maybe come back down to earth later on. I think Denver's that team this year, and I got them beating Baltimore 24-23.
You have what now?
I've got Denver beating Baltimore.
Their opponents are 0-9, dude. What?
They're a 1-point favorite. It's not that.
How are they a 1-point favorite? They haven't played a real team yet.
Okay, they've still looked strong in all three of the games. They shut out the Jets last week.
It's the Jets.
They've got a legitimate defense.
Sure, they do. Do they have a legitimate offense?
Yes, they've got two very good running backs, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams. They've got Teddy Bridgewater, who is a more than capable quarterback of beating a team like the Ravens. The Ravens did not play well against Detroit
Teddy
last
Bridgewater,
week.
But he's not beating them. And maybe that was the kick in the pants they needed. They've had a lot of close games, and I think this is the game that they realize, boy, oh boy, wait a second, we probably shouldn't be in this many close games. 24-13. You are crazy.
All right.
You are crazy, my friend. There is no way the Broncos win this game.
All right, Denver 24-23.
No.
Green Bay hosting Pittsburgh. This one isn't that crazy. Packers 31-17 after a big win on Sunday Night Football. I think Aaron Rodgers is back.
Yeah, and one old quarterback is better than the other, and I don't think you need to look too hard to see who it is. Ben Roethlisberger looked genuinely embarrassing against the Bengals that got them the win last week. And, I mean, if people are asking, is it time for the Steelers to move on from Ben Roethlisberger for, like, the third straight year? It's probably time for the Steelers to move on from Ben Roethlisberger. They haven't yet, which is understandable. He's a franchise hero who brought them 2 Super Bowl wins. But he is not going into Green Bay and beating Aaron Rodgers. 38-14 Packers.
Tampa Bay at New England. Tom Brady's return to Foxborough for Sunday Night Football, and I don't think it's going to be a very close game at all. I think there's still some growing pains going on with the Patriots. Mac Jones, still trying to really get his feet underneath him, and I think Tampa Bay, with that defense, with that offense that has been strong this year, they go into New England, win it 27-13.
Yep, 28-10 Tampa Bay. They've just got a really good offense and a decent defense, shored up by the recent acquisition of Richard Sherman this week. And Bill Belichick's done great against rookie quarterbacks, but Tom Brady is basically the opposite of a rookie quarterback. So I don't think the Patriots are going to do that well. I think the Buccaneers will, and I think they're going to bounce back from that loss to the Rams.
Finally, Monday Night Football. This could be a very exciting game between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert and company coming off that big win at Arrowhead over the Chiefs on Sunday, 30-24. Raiders got the overtime win over the Miami Dolphins, 28-25. They're 3-0. Chargers are 2-1, and I think the Raiders have a little bit of a different feel to them this year. I think that they had to battle through some adversity last week. They have a couple really big, strong team-building wins against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, even last week against Miami, and I think they'll go into L.A. and win another close one because I think they just have that kind of ability to battle through some adversity and pull out the close game. I've got Vegas 30-28.
I mean, I agree. This is going to be a very close game, but those team-building wins you mentioned for the Raiders, the Chargers got a big one just last week for the first time in a long time, and you can confirm this as a Chiefs fan. They went into Arrowhead and they beat the Chiefs. They proved that they can hang with them for a whole game, especially if their defense forces a lot of turnovers, and they won. And the most important part, I think, was that they didn't settle. In that fourth quarter, they went for the kill. They went for the touchdown instead of the field goal because they knew you give Mahomes 20 seconds, 80 yards to go, he might do it. So don't let him do it by just scoring the touchdown and making sure that there's no chance that he can come down and win the game on you without at least getting it to overtime. And I think this one might go to overtime, to be perfectly honest. That's how evenly matched these two teams are, but I've got L.A.
Okay.
27-24 Chargers.
So what's that, 4 different games that we are opposing in our viewpoints?
So we could still be even.
Maybe, but
well, I mean,
we'll see.
All that has to happen is, let's see, we were different on Colts, Dolphins, Ravens, Broncos, Raiders, Chargers, and what else? Were we different on Lions, Bears?
No. Okay, I think it might only be 3 then.
Okay, so never mind.
Oh, Seahawks, Niners. You have San Francisco.
Yes, I do. So let's see. We need Seattle, Baltimore, Los Angeles, and Indianapolis to win, and we'll still be even.
All right. Well, Sunday, better get the job done. We got to separate at some point here.
Yeah, we do.
Major League Baseball, including today, there are only 4 days remaining in the regular season, and the home run race, Salvador Perez has pulled ahead with 48. He leads by 2. He's tied the Royals franchise record. Padres have dropped below 500 after they were 67-49, 18 games above 500 on August 10th. So big collapse for San Diego. And speaking of the National League West, the National League as a whole, that playoff picture is just about set. The Giants look to be the 1 seed unless they get swept by Milwaukee this weekend. They should win the NL West. Brewers should win the NL Central and be the 2 seed. Braves should win the NL East and be the 3 seed. And then Dodgers, looking like the number 1 wild card team. They'll host a wild card game against St. Louis, who has just gone on a 17-game win streak. Brewers just ended it yesterday with a 4-0 victory. And then in the American League, Astros look like they'll win the West. White Sox have already won the Central. Rays will win the East. And then the Yankees, Red Sox, Mariners, and Blue Jays are all within 2 games of each other in the AL wild card. Yankees at the moment are the 1 seed in the wild card. Red Sox are the 2. Then the Mariners just a half game back, and the Blue Jays 1 game back. So will be very interesting down the stretch and going into this weekend, as we've got, as I said, just 4 games left. And we'll close things out here with Brendan.
What is happening? Texas offensive players had a pretty good weekend. First, they dropped 70 on Texas Tech, then the guy who ended the Texas A&M rivalry back when he was in college with a game-winning kick against the Aggies, had an NFL record for the longest kick that bounced off the crossbar and broke the already broken several times hearts of people who live in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to love Justin Tucker, right? I mean, the guy is probably certainly the best kicker in the league at this point. He's been doing it for so long. Dude's an opera singer, too. You got to love that.
And he went to Texas.
Okay, I guess so. Fine. But 66 yards for the win. He put it off the crossbar, as you said, and just an incredible moment.
I mean, I saw a lot of people talking about, is Justin Tucker not just the greatest in the league right now, which obviously he is, but is he potentially the greatest kicker to ever do it? Because I think, for the most part, all of the kickers that have had that resume have played in the past 20, 25 or so years. Morton Anderson of the Falcons played for a long time. I think he's still the all-time NFL leader in points. He was good for a while. Adam Vinatieri, probably one of the most clutch guys of all time, played for the Patriots and the Colts for a while. Steven Gostkowski also played for the Patriots. He was clutch. But I think at this point, Tucker's reaching the point where his resume compares with almost all of them.
Yeah, he's still got a lot of time left in the league. Justin Tucker, certainly one of the best to ever do it, and we'll see if he can make some kicks for your Ravens. As you think they'll beat Denver, I disagree.
They will.
All right, we'll see what happens come Sunday. That's it for us for episode 6. Brennan, anything else here before we wrap it up?
Yeah, make sure to tune into the broadcast on Friday night. You won't be able to hear my beautiful voice, but that's okay because we got another play-by-play guy coming in, Alex Tejan, who's hopefully going to take over for us next year. He's a pretty solid commentator, already done a lot of work with it, and now he gets to step onto the main team. You're going to take color commentary for the first time.
Sliding over to color,
so I hope you enjoy that, but make sure to tune in for that. If you want to send me some gifts or monetary compensation, because I'll be sad that I'm not doing it, feel free to do that. Please, I'm very sad. Send money. But, yeah, enjoy the game. Enjoy the new commentary team. I will be back on the air the next prep home game, which I don't believe is for a couple more weeks.
October 22nd. Yep.
Yeah, so a couple more weeks. But, do enjoy the game. Do enjoy all the football and baseball and whatnot going on. Enjoy all the NBA news, even though it's not all that great. But, yeah, keep tuning in. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
All right, that'll do it. Episode 6 in the books. Everybody enjoy the game tomorrow night, and enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next week.